They thought they were laughing at a simple man in muddy boots, a dairy farmer who didn't fit their picture-perfect neighborhood. But what they didn't know was that the very land they lived on carried a history deeper than their mockery, and that the man they mocked was about to own every piece of it. This isn't just a story of revenge. It's a story of patience, grit, and a quiet man who turned laughter into power. Before we dive into this unbelievable saga of farmers, neighbors, and property power moves, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss stories like this one. Drop a like if you enjoy watching HOA drama flip on its head. And let's get right into it. The dairy farmer's story began long before the neighborhood was even built. For generations, his family had worked the land, producing milk and cheese that supplied local shops and restaurants. The land was their pride, passed down like a treasure chest of soil, barns, and grazing pastures. But as the years went by, developers set their eyes on it, offering the family a tempting payout to sell. When his parents grew older and he was still struggling to keep the farm afloat amid rising costs, the family finally agreed to sell large portions of their land. They kept a few acres, enough for a modest dairy operation, but the developers took the rest. On those once open fields, rows of modern houses sprouted, an HOA-run community where neighbors prided themselves on neat lawns, strict rules, and a sense of superiority over anyone who didn't conform. For the farmer, it wasn't the land he lost that stung most. It was the way the new community treated him. They looked down on him, his barn, and his cows as if he was dirt beneath their shoes. He would wave at neighbors passing by, but they averted their eyes. They sneered at the smell of fresh manure drifting from his property. They mocked the mud on his boots and laughed about his truck, calling it an eyesore. What hurt most was that these people were living on land that once belonged to his family, yet they had the audacity to treat him as an outsider. Their contempt grew into hostility when the HOA board began complaining about his cows, ruining the neighborhood aesthetic. They sent letters demanding he clean up on his property and accused him of lowering their home values. At first, he ignored them. He had chores, cows to milk, fields to tend. But the insults escalated. Passive-aggressive comments at town meetings, whispered jokes about backwards farmers, and even children mocking him in front of their parents. The farmer stayed quiet, but his silence wasn't weakness. Every insult sank deep, and deep roots grow strong. He began to notice cracks forming in the HOA community. Their obsession with appearances meant constant infighting, neighbors arguing over fence colors, lawn heights, and even holiday decorations. The HOA's funds were poorly managed, and disputes often spilled into public records. The farmer realized that while they laughed at him, they were sitting on fragile ground, and so he waited. He milked his cows, sold his dairy at the market, and saved every dime. Land prices in the area began to shift. When one homeowner defaulted on their mortgage, the farmer quietly bought the property through an auction, disguising his ownership through a holding company. Nobody noticed. Over time, cracks in the community widened. More foreclosures popped up as HOA fees rose and residents grew tired of the endless drama. One by one, the farmer bought properties, never revealing himself. All the while, the board still mocked him, completely unaware that their enemy was slowly becoming their landlord. He didn't act rashly. He worked patiently, milking cows by morning, signing papers by night. Each acre he regained brought him closer to reclaiming the land his family once owned. But the turning point came when the HOA itself faced bankruptcy from lawsuits and unpaid dues. The farmer saw his moment. He bought the development's debt at a fraction of its value, making him the holder of their fate. The very people who had laughed at his muddy boots now unknowingly depended on him for their homes. As the final papers were signed, he walked back onto the land, no longer just a farmer but the owner of everything they had built on his family's soil. The story didn't end there, though. What came next was the part that shook the entire neighborhood. When the farmer revealed himself as the true owner, the shock rippled like a storm through the community. HOA board members who had mocked him for years were now powerless. He called for a meeting, not to rub their faces in it, but to lay out a new vision. He explained that his family's legacy wasn't just about cows and barns. It was about respect for the land and those who worked it. The board sat in silence, some embarrassed, others angry. They had no choice but to listen, for he now controlled the land their homes stood on. He announced that HOA rules would change. Gone were the endless fines for trivial infractions. Gone was the obsession with appearances that divided neighbors. Instead, the community would shift towards sustainability, with plots set aside for gardens, and rules adjusted to encourage cooperation over competition. Some residents were relieved. They were tired of fighting over mailbox paint and lawn ornaments. Others resisted, still clinging to their old pride. But none could deny that the man they mocked now held the reins. Word of his revenge spread beyond the neighborhood. Local news picked it up, painting him as the humble farmer who outsmarted the arrogant HOA. People admired his patience, his quiet power, and his refusal to lash out despite years of mistreatment. For the farmer, the victory wasn't in humiliating them. It was in reclaiming what was his and proving that respect is earned, not dictated by appearances. But change wasn't easy. Some neighbors tried to push back, questioning his authority, filing complaints, even trying to rally others against him. They underestimated his resolve. He had weathered storms, economic downturns, and years of mockery. Their petty resistance was nothing compared to the challenges he had already faced. Slowly, the community began to shift. Families started planting gardens in their backyards. Children visited the farmer's cows, learning where their milk came from. Neighbors who once sneered began greeting him warmly, humbled by his story. He didn't seek their friendship, but he accepted it when it came. For him, the land was never just dirt. It was memory, heritage, and promise. Owning it again wasn't about revenge, it was about restoring balance. Yet deep inside, he knew that the scars of mockery never fully healed. But standing on his porch, watching the sun set over fields once lost, he knew one truth. They mocked the dairy farmer, and in the end, he bought it all back. If you enjoyed this incredible story of patience and power, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe for more jaw-dropping HOA and property drama stories, and ring the bell so you never miss when the underdog wins big. Share this video with a friend who loves seeing karma served cold, and we'll see you in the next one.